Kat is 26 years old. She worked at Media Matters. She's a progressive influencer. She's a progressive journalist and is running against 80-year-old 14-term Democrat incumbent. If Gen Z is as fed up with the status quo as they say, I wonder if we'll be seeing a lot more of these kinds of matchups. I hope we do. I hope we do see a lot more of these kinds of matchups. Efendim.
Donald Trump and...
Speaking of people running for office, here's my moot. Kat. She's running for Congress.
Elon Musk are dismantling our country piece by piece. And so many Democrats seem content to just sit back and let them. So I say it's time to drop the excuses and grow a spine. I'm Kat Abughazaleh, and I'm running for Congress in Illinois' 9th District. Unfortunately, this party has become one where you have to look to the exceptions for real leadership, as the majority work from an outdated playbook. We need a makeover, which means we need a vision that's bigger than what we've been told is possible. There's
Kafia on the left, she's Palestinian.
Absolutely no reason you shouldn't be able to afford housing, groceries, and healthcare with some money left over. Families should have free childcare, Social Security should be expanded, and our inalienable rights shouldn't be dependent on who's in power. That means standing up to authoritarians, not shrinking away when the fight gets tough. And while current Democratic leadership might be fine cowering to Trump, I'm not. I've spent my entire career reporting on the far right and being attacked by them as a result. In fact, just a few months ago, Elon Musk's lawyers deposed me here in Chicago to ask about my mean tweets. Look, I thought comedy was legal again. This is all to say, I'm not scared of standing up to these people. I know how they think, and I know how to beat them. But my campaign itself is going to be different too, because I don't want to wait a year to help people. We're focused on meeting constitutional rule. What if we didn't suck? My campaign and I would rather spend our money on book drives and clothing exchanges and public events than fancy fundraisers for rich donors. I also want my campaign to be as transparent as possible. That's why I'll be posting regular videos about the costs and steps of running for office. We all deserve better. We deserve human rights and financial freedom and a party that stands up to authoritarians. We deserve to thrive, not just survive. And I plan to fight for those ideals both on the campaign trail and in Congress. If you want to know more about me and what I believe, you can go to catforillinois.com. I do need to mention that campaigns cost money and ask you to contribute what you can. But I promise your donation will not be wasted on old, ineffective tactics. No spammy guilt trip texts, no focus groups to test my views, and no grifty consultants who care more about their paycheck than actually winning. It's time to challenge the status quo, and if our leaders won't do it, we will. I'm Kat Abughazaleh, and I'm running for Congress because it's time for Democrats to do more.
Yeah. Also, this was a funny moment, but reporters, are you concerned at all about incumbents getting ousted this cycle? Here, let's hear what the Dems have to say about this.
Are you concerned at all about incumbents getting ousted this cycle, and what specific steps?
Who are you talking about?
Congressman Schakowsky is facing a challenge from Kat Abughazaleh.
She's a longstanding member, obviously a longstanding stalwart progressive member. I'm unfamiliar with this particular.
Yeah, the person she's running against in Illinois is Jan Schakowsky, who's like 80 years old. Kat is 26 years old. She worked at Media Matters. She's a progressive influencer. She's a progressive journalist and is running against 80-year-old 14-term Democrat incumbent. If Gen Z is as fed up with the status quo as they say, I wonder if we'll be seeing a lot more of these kinds of matchups. I hope we do. I hope we do see a lot more of these kinds of matchups. Efendim. Kitchen Island, though. Here's also Representative Schakowsky, who's backed by J Street and has received $742,000 from the Israel lobby. She consistently votes for more weapons for Israel and voted present on AIPAC's main sponsorship bill. She's like, Schakowsky is not as pro-Israel as some of these other Democrats are, for the record. She's a J Street Democrat, which is different than an AIPAC Democrat. But it still doesn't change the dynamic. She's 80 years old. She's done 14 terms. Wait, what? Did you lock it? Oh, no. Wait, oh, don't pull it. Okay, Mom. Oh, my God. Hold on. It
hasn't even been 2 months, and most Democrats are ready to cede control of Trump.
Mom.
I mean, don't get me wrong. They've had some great ideas. Giving up, playing dead, getting mad at their constituents. But it's not over yet, because Democrats have one last strategy: abandoning their entire base. On Sunday, Politico released this article about a Democratic retreat in Loudoun County, Virginia last month. Attended by staffers, consultants, electeds, and party leadership, this group laid out 20 solutions to win back the working class. And all of them, at least the ones listed in this article, are various middle fingers. Because instead of reflecting on where they went wrong in Harris's campaign, like not differentiating her and Biden at all, or courting this mythical Liz Cheney superfan, or putting a muzzle on Tim Walz, these Democrats have decided it's just easier to become Republican light. Here are some actual quotes from this Democratic Party victory plan. Democrats should ban far-left candidate questionnaires and refuse to participate in forums that create ideological purity tests. This is a pretty obvious dig at an ACLU survey in 2019 given to Democratic primary candidates. Republicans exploited it for culture war reasons. I do think that survey was unnecessary and weirdly worded, especially for a primary. But I'm not sure it's like the main thing we should be focusing on. Also, this point raises a lot more questions than answers.
Kaya,
what counts as far
please.
left? In this case, would it be the ACLU? Why do you need to control or ban these institutions? And like, how often is this an issue? Are you spending all of your time doing ideological purity tests? When is the last time you saw your children? Okay, this one's my favorite. Democrats should also move away from the dominance of small dollar donors whose preferences may not align with the broader electorate. Excuse me, what the? Small dollar donors? You mean the average American who can only spare like $5 to $10 because they're living paycheck to paycheck? That is the broader electorate. Also, if you think corporate money and rich small dollar donors, guess what? You're a Republican. Democrats should push back against far-left staffers and groups that exert a disproportionate influence on policy and messaging. Once again, what's the far left here? Also, what groups? That phrase is vague on purpose, but here's a little secret. Behind closed doors, a lot of powerful Democrats and donors refer to the millions of diverse, complex lives that make up our country as the groups. And if that feels dehumanizing, that's because it is. Also, if you think transgender people or Muslims or disabled people had disproportionate influence over the last election, I'd ask how they feel about that. Candidates should get out of elite circles and into real communities, like tailgates, gun shows, local restaurants, churches. Hypothetically, this could be good, but you have to wonder what they mean by elites, especially because we know big donors, i.e. rich people, are good. As someone who monitors political and particularly conservative media for work, I can tell you what it actually means. Academia, artistic communities, the groups. You know, the opposite of real America. Also, how insulting is this? These Dems watched one episode of King of the Hill, didn't understand what the episode was actually about, and was like, yeah, we're going with that. If you actually want conservative voters, don't cosplay what you think they are. They'll think you're disingenuous because you're being disingenuous. But if you actually wanted to make a difference, you could use some of those big dollar donors to provide physical aid to people who have lost their jobs because of Trump, who can't access their Medicaid. You could be the tangible lifeboat to the effects of the man they voted for. That would change far more minds than pretending that you know how to shoot a gun. But this leads beautifully into our last bullet. The party needs to own the failures of democratic governance in large cities and commit to improving local government. This is a right-wing dog whistle, plain and simple. Conservatives constantly complain about democratic-run cities, so that way they can spread racist narratives that increase police funding and surveillance. It keeps their audience paranoid, just how they want.
Oh, hey, gang. Thank you for everyone who's donating. Hey, congratulations. Good luck, Kat. Respect for putting yourself out there like this.
For Democrats to be saying that is scary. I do agree we need to support and highlight local government way more, but to do that, you need to look at large cities. 80% of America lives in urban areas. Those people matter just as much as the other 20%. This is not moderation. It's soft radicalization. We didn't lose to Trump because Kamala Harris was too woke. We lost to Trump because the Democratic Party refused to change. They refused to have an actual primary to give voters another option besides Joe Biden. And once Harris was in, they stalled her momentum, reining her in so she didn't go too far left. And it's not because they didn't want to alienate conservative voters. It's because they didn't want those goals, those far left ideas, to happen. Most progressive policies are wildly popular if you don't market them like an idiot. For example, the vast majority of Americans would love for their tax dollars to pay for the doctor. The vast majority of Americans want more than a month off when they have a baby. into when they go back to work. They want their tax dollars spent on fixing roads and funding schools and paying for their parents' social security, rather than bombs and corporate tax breaks. There is no reason we can't have all of this, except for the fact that it takes a lot of work and corporations would earn a little bit less in profit. And I mean, we can't lose their lobbying dollars, can we? This is why a shit ton of people in Congress, regardless of party, don't even try to make things better.
Central Community was introduced me to this a few days ago. Yes, dude, I see a lot of Gary stuff. I know he's popping off, and he's a good dude. I like his opinions. He's very good. We've been watching his stuff on here as well. All right.
And why even more people in the media demonize those policies. If these policies weren't popular, people like Rupert Murdoch wouldn't have to spend billions of dollars to convince you that they're not. The Democratic Party is supposed to be the opposition party. Yes, we deserve more than a two-party system, but we don't have that yet. So this means right now, Democrats either need to step up or step down. We don't need an opposition party that tries to accomplish the same stuff as the other guys, but a little quieter, a little more polite. There is one way to move the needle here, and we have to do it while we still can. The answer is to primary every Democrat who is not doing their job. And guess what? You can do it. You'll either win, and then you can run in the general election and try to make your vision reality in Congress, or you lose. And that sucks. Incumbent Democrats aren't used to primaries. And by running against them, you have jeopardized their access to power, which is the only thing the vast majority of Congress cares about. They should be using their platforms, their voices, their physical bodies to try to stop Trump's agenda, or at least slow it down wherever possible. They should talk to voters every single day, not abandon them. And they should publicly distance themselves from any colleagues that are willing to collaborate with Trump. Because if you're spending your time doing shit like this, you should probably join the other side. I heard they love opportunistic grifters.